Okay, in this video lesson, what we're going to do is take a look at events or event handling.
Yep.
What do I mean by this? Well, so far we have made a window.
Yep.
We have populated the window with controls. We now have a panel that contains buttons, text, and list controls.
Yep.
But they do nothing.
Nope, you click the button, nothing happens.
Nothing happens. And you know, what good is a GUI if it doesn't do anything for the user?
Nothing.
Nothing. It's just like a picture that can move around when you click buttons, and that's about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on how we can give life to our controls, and we do this through events.
Yep.
And there's two different ways to go about handling events. We have event tables and we have dynamic events. This lesson here is going to focus on event tables, which is, I guess you could kind of say, it's the more popular way of handling events.
Right, it's usually more clean.
It's the cleaner approach.
Yes.
Yeah, you stole my words.
Yeah, whatever.
So anyways, dynamic events, though, they are still important. And sometimes you just have to use them. And so we're going to take a look at dynamic events in the next lesson.
Right.
But for this lesson, we're going to see if we can, let's say, make our button do a little message box.
Right.
Maybe take that text control and whatever's in it, add that into our list control.
Right, and we'll even throw in a menu.
So yeah, that sounds cool. Have a menu in there with some functionality. So with that, Joel, talk a little bit about what happens in Windows when a control is manipulated, like a button's pressed.
Well, let's go ahead and start this. Let's build it, since apparently there were changes. Well, basically what's happening is events are always being processed. Okay. Every time I move the mouse on this window, an event is being sent to that window saying the mouse is moved. When I click on a button, it says a button has been pressed, and so on and so forth. But right now, that
this
event
is being sent to the window.
Yes, it's being sent to the window, and wxWidgets is actually capturing that event and then sending it to whoever needs to have it.
As long as that's set up.
As long as it's set up.
Right.
Right now, the event is being sent, but nobody's handling that event. It's just kind of being thrown off into the default event handler, basically. Okay. So the basic stuff that happens, and that's it.
Moving a window,
moving a window,
stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
Okay.
It just does basic stuff. I mean, when we resize this, a resize event is actually being sent to the sizer to resize this button.
Precisely.
And that's capturing that event and actually doing something about it. Add, it's sending the event, but it's not doing anything. So that's basically what we need to do.
Even then, it does handle the event a little bit. The button
does do the
that's right.
drawing.
So okay, cool.
So now what we need to do is add it so that we can have our own custom event happen when a click event occurs.
Okay.
So let's exit this out and open up the header for the mainframe. Now, as you can see here, we don't really have anything. So what we need to do is declare an event table. Now, to do this, well, we only have to do one little thing, is create a private section, because we don't really want anyone else to be...
No, that wouldn't make sense.
No, it wouldn't make sense at all. And just say declare event table. And then just have it something like that. And with that, that's all you need inside the header file, and then it works fine. All you need to do is come back into the CPP file, and on the top of here, declare the actual event table, what is going to happen. So you can say begin event table, and you pass it two things, as you can see from here, the class and the base class. Which class are we dealing with? Mainframe. What's the base class? wxFrame. So wxFrame. I can spell, really. Then inside of here, let's make.
You could even go ahead and block that in and jump down and end off the event table.
Yeah, we can say end event table, and just with that code, we have a table, and then inside of here, inside of this area right here, we put which events we want to handle.
Right.
Let's say we want to add.
Let's say the OK button.
It brings up a message box. Yeah, that's a good idea. So, but the first thing is when we create an event, basically all we do is say event button, and that's going to depend on what you have. If it's event menu, it's going to be evt_menu, or it's a list. It will change, but in this case, it's a button, and we pass it two things.
My guess is we're going to somehow have to know which button was pressed.
Which one? If you remember down here, there's the second one, which is the window ID, which is perfect.
Right.
We pass it something that identifies that window.
Right, but the problem right now is we kind of all gave them the ID of
negative one.
And that's okay. It didn't cause any problems.
Right, it's just they don't really have a unique identifier.
Right, so now we need to be able to distinguish the difference between add and
OK. Right. Yeah. So what we need to do is let's just...
Oh, can I say this real quick?
Yeah.
That puts us in another unique situation. We can't go in there and just... I mean, we could go in here and just start plugging in our own numbers.
Right.
But that's like magic numbers.
Yeah, that's magic numbers. That's not cool.
What do those numbers really mean?
Right.
So now we need to go set something up so we have our own constants.
Right. And there's two ways to do this. Well, there's actually quite a few.
Right.
But one common way is to use a define statement, and you can say something like, OK button, and we can give it an ID of say 400.
But that means now if you want to go with the next one, you just have to copy
You
that
have
line,
to increment it,
change
and
it
so
to 401 or whatever.
Right.
But then I think you've said this once before in a previous VTM or something. But what happens then if you want to go back and put something in the middle?
Right. You have to increment everything.
All
that's
the
after
numbers
it.
after that have to change. What a pain to maintain that.
Instead, what we can use is called an enumeration.
Yeah.
And we'll just call this list. And inside of here, we can just declare OK button
And give it a value.
and give it a value of 400.
And that's like our starting point.
That's our starting point. And then anything after that, we just set it a value. Say add button, since we're going to be using that anyway. And add button automatically has the value 401.
Get that little pop-up. You can do it. Here it comes. Here it comes. I have faith. Maybe not.
Too much faith. So basically, OK button is going to get the value of 400, and the add button is going to get the value of 401, which is exactly what we're looking for. So with that set, what we can do, well, let's delete this define, because we don't want duplicates. Let's come over to here, and
let's
right
get
here,
these -1s out of there now.
and the add, let's change this to button. Or
It's add underscore button.
Add underscore. I'm dyslexic. Add underscore button, and here, OK underscore button. So that's perfect.
So much easier. It makes so much more sense.
Oh, yes. And the other thing we're going to do is, and as you can see,
There's your 401.
There's my 401.
I was just determined to make that pop up somewhere.
So we see the add button, that constant, that enumeration is 401. The OK button is 400.
But
Perfect.
now we can identify the buttons independently of one another.
Right. So they're actually unique. And inside of here,
back to our event table.
We can say the button ID is going to be OK button. And now we need to call, which function do we need to call?
Right.
So let's say it's going to be mainframe.
Of course, part of mainframe.
On OK.
Okay. Which doesn't exist.
Which
at the
doesn't
moment.
exist at the moment. So what we need to do
we've got some stuff to do.
we need to make it exist.
Prototyping.
So come over to here, and what we need to do is it's going to be a void. It's not going to return anything, and we're going to say on OK. Now, when we have a message handler, the person, well, wxWidgets that sends us the event is going to also pass different properties related to that event. And depending on which event you send it, it'll send you a different class. In this case, it's going to be wxCommandEvent. So it sends a reference to the class CommandEvent, which contains information about that message, like the ID or what exactly happened, that kind of thing.
But of course, that again, that's gonna change
depending on the
various
event type.
controls.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a menu event or that kind of thing.
Right.
So with that declared inside the class header file, we can come over to here, just tack this onto the end here, and just say mainframe : and
we're almost there.
now let's make it do something.
Yeah.
So
Message box.
Message box, and we need to pass it, well, the message. So let's do the underscore T. Try not to forget that, and then say OK button pressed. Woohoo!
Woo!
And well, and then the second thing is the title for the message.
Title of the little dialogue that pops up.
So let's just say OK event,
Cool.
or let's just call it button event. Try not to get too picky with names, but hey. So that's
There
pretty
you
much
go.
it. And if we compile this, hopefully everything should work fine.
And execute, and we should see some functionality now when we click OK.
Ding.
Hey.
OK button press.
Woohoo!
Very nice. So now what if we wanted to add, say, something to the add event?
Something a little bit more sophisticated,
Right.
like read what's in the text control and put that over into the
List box.
list box. Yeah.
So we're going to need to change a few ways I did things. You'll notice here, I create the list box, put it into the pointer list box, excuse me, and then
Ooh,
right
yeah.
afterwards, I lose it.
We lose it. It's
So I
done.
don't really know
so
where
how do
it
we
is.
get back to it? Right.
Precisely. So what I'm going to do is just copy this and make it a private member of my mainframe class. So let me just declare another private section, kind of to differentiate between the macro section here and where my variables are.
Right.
So MS list box.
And we've talked about this as well in regards to,
Organizing
we lose
it.
organizing it. And what I was getting at is losing something that you really need to keep track of during
Yeah.
the life of the instance of the class.
Yeah.
We talked about that in the VTM number 3, the game design one.
Right.
So it's pretty important here that we always know where this list box is.
Right, because we're going to be using it
Right.
in other functions. So inside of here, let's just change this around, get rid of that.
Ah, so much nicer.
And
And text
just
control
text
as
control.
well.
So let's copy this guy, put it on a separate line, and then come over to here and just delete that out, and we're set.
Look at that. You the man.
Yeah, I know. So what we're going to do now is just capture the add button event. Check this out. Change this to add.
So he's updating his event table now, just adding more to it.
Adding more to it. And we're going to call the onAdd function, which again doesn't exist, but no worries. All we need to do is come to the header file, declare the onOK event, onAdd.
Yeah.
And again, it's going to pass the same thing because it's still a button
Still
event.
a button.
And let's just copy this and move down to the bottom here and just paste this in. So say mainframe and then continue on. Let's see. So onAdd, what do we want to do here? We want to add whatever is in the text control into the list box. Well, we've inserted items before. So all we need to do is say lst list box, and then we say insert, and then we want to insert whatever's in the text control here. So txt control.
Which means now we need to figure out how to get the value out of the text control.
Right, and right now we don't know how to do that, right?
So there's a help file.
There is a help file.
And it's supposed to be pretty good, I hear.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
So let's come down to the help file here. And let's go to contents, go to index, and this is kind of the easiest way to go to a particular class. Let's just say wx text control. So we go into here. So this is the text control. So we need to find somewhere down here where it says what functions are available to us. So if we go to the very bottom, look at all this.
Event handling, by the way, you just went by.
Yes, yeah, that's another thing to say. Event handling, these are the different events that can be captured about the event.
Right.
So as you can see, we can say event text responds to a text updated, so I changed something in the text box, that kind of thing. So anyways, as we were saying down here,
okay, so functions that are available to us.
These are all the members that we can use for the text control.
Ooh, the second to the last one you just highlighted was
This
get
one.
value. Yeah.
Get value. Let's see. Gets the contents of the control. Notice that blah, 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 blah. So it gets the contents of the control. Perfect. So we come over to here, text control, get value, and that's it. And let's say we wanted to append it to the beginning for now. So we say index 0, just as we did before.
Just like we did before, right?
So we save that, and if all went well, that should work.
Oh, it will work.
It will work. Must have confidence.
That's right.
So let's call this 3D Buzz Rocks. Add that, and it adds it right in there.
Very cool.
Now, what if we wanted to, just for kicks, add it to the very end?
Okay. So now we need to, that number, instead of 0, it's going to have to be basically however many things we have.
That's right, the last one.
Since it's 0 based, it'll automatically, that'll work perfect.
Yep.
Just find out how many things are in there.
That's right. So let's go over to here again, just to show you guys how this works. Press the back button, and what we need to do is basically get the count.
But not of the text control. We need the list box.
But not of the text control, but the list box. So if we come over to index and say wx list control.
There we go.
And just come into here like we did before. Just kind of scroll down again, as you can see.
It's got all sorts of events.
So if we come down here, we want to get item count. But in this case, this happens every now and then. The help file may be a little bit dated. That's okay.
Yeah.
But what we want is get count, which isn't really on here. But you can see right down here we have get item count, which is close. You can kind of get the idea. But
and again, let me stress what Joel just said. This isn't a very common thing that you're going to run into.
No, it's very rare.
From time to time, as functions get updated or added to.
Right. It may change.
Right.
So what we want to do here is just say, instead of 0, we want to say list box.
Because we want to find out in this list box.
Dot get count.
Yeah. How many things are in there.
That's right. So if we compile that, it works. We execute it.
So right now, before you even hit add, if you think about it, how many things are in there?
1.
1. And what's the index of this guy?
1.
This guy, the first one, 0.
Right.
So if we say to put this at the count being 1, at 1, it's going to put it after.
At the end.
So bink, and there it is at the end. So type something incredible, Joel. There we go. So 3D Buzz rocks. So again, what's our how many things we have down here?
2.
2. And this last guy is 1.
Index 1.
So 2 would be the next one.
Perfect.
It's like magic.
Oh yes. So as you can see, we have 2 functionalities now. The add button works, and the OK button gives us an amazing message box.
Excellent. So if anybody wanted to go further and do things like, if you really wanted to get crazy and you wanted to insert and stuff like that,
right.
you know, you'd select, you could find out where you were at. And
yeah, get the selected index.
Exactly. And then just use that number to base off where you need to add the new stuff, too.
Instead, I'm going to add something interesting, and that's a menu.
Yeah.
I could have showed this in the last class, how to add menus.
In the last lesson.
But I decided not to because I'm cool like that. So instead I'm going to create it here.
So
Starting.
keep track of where he's at. He's back in the mainframe itself.
Yes, I'm back in the
Main
mainframe,
window.
and this is where you want to create it. Just as pretty much just like any other
Same
control.
place where you created all your controls.
Right,
Yeah.
it's the same place. So you create a WX menu, and we'll just call this file menu. This is the actual items here. Like this right here, this is an actual WX menu. The actual entire thing here, this is a menu bar.
Right.
So with the file menu, we're going to create a new WX menu.
Bar.
Well, for this one, it's a menu.
Yeah.
And then for file menu, we want to append an item. And of course, the first one is going to be the actual ID. We'll just give it -1 just temporarily.
Right.
And inside here is going to be what caption it is. So we follow the syntax and say
Add. Maybe. Yeah.
So the ampersand just means
use the underscore under A for the letter that follows it, basically, so that you've got a like Alt A.
Right.
Shortcut hotkey. There you
Hotkey,
go.
there it is.
I was getting my brains all jumbled up at the moment.
That's kind of why I turned it off to you.
Oh, your brain jumbled too?
Yep. So we got one item appended
So let's
into the file
let's
menu.
add two because it's real easy. Just we'll
Right.
change this to exit.
Oh, okay.
We're just making this up on the fly, guys.
Exit.
There we go.
So that works well.
Okay, with now the X being our hotkey.
Right. And now what we need to do is
Shortcut key.
create the menu bar, the thing that contains
Right.
all of the things. And say, so WX menu bar,
There we go.
and we'll just call this menu bar. And again, we're not creating these as global variables because we don't really need to access them.
Right.
Not in this case, anyway. So we'll create a new WX menu bar. And menu bar, I can do it. Menu bar, and same as before, just append one to it. And we're going to append the file menu that we just created into it. And what do we want the caption to be that right here? So in this case, it would be file. So just underscore T, and then and file. Simple as that. So the last thing, though, that we need to do is actually set the window to use that menu that we've just created. Because right now there's no connection between our frame and the menu bar we just created. So all you need to do is say set menu bar, which is a function inside WX frame, and we pass it menu underscore bar. And that's it.
There you go.
So let's go ahead and compile this, just so you can see that it's there.
That it's there, though, of course, has no functionality at the moment.
So if we run this
Ooh.
file, add an exit. And of course they don't do anything right now.
Right.
So okay, now here's what's really cool. We can come back into here and ID list. Let's just add another one. And typically it's a really good practice to develop some sort of, general rule for creating the ID. So like for a menu, it would start out with MNU.
Sure.
And then you can create something like add and then MNU underscore exit.
And for those of you out there wondering why he did OK and add, let's hope he doesn't hear me.
Yeah.
He should have done something like
BTN. Right.
Yeah.
BTN is usually a much better way to do things.
But they get the idea. You don't have to change it. I
Right.
just want to point it out.
And another thing is we can redefine where it starts out
That's
as well,
right.
but we don't need to. In this case, 401,
Yeah.
it's perfectly fine. So with that, we can come back over to here, and we want this guy to be MNU add, and this guy here to be MNU exit. Everything makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So in here, all we need to do is, before this was an event button, right? In this case, let's see what it'd be. Event menu, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And as you can see, we get the little pop-up here, window ID. We know this. We want this to be MNU add. And function. What do we want to do?
What is it going to call when you
Well,
click it?
mainframe on add, because we want it to perform the exact
Do the
same function.
thing as the button.
That's right. So, and it is important, however, to add that if we come over to the header file, not every single event that you create is going to require a function that passes this event, this WX command event. It just so happens that a menu and a button can pass the same thing. So it will vary
It'll work
depending.
in this case here.
Right. But just be careful if something goes, well, it's not compatible. Just check the documentation, it'll tell you. So for event menu, for our exiting, it's going to be something completely different. So we're going to have to say mainframe, let's call on exit. Simple enough.
Sounds good.
So come back to mainframe, and
get on exit setup.
So if we come back to the very bottom here, and all we need to do to close the program is call close. And just pass it true means yes, we really want to close it.
Right.
No,
we were just kidding when we typed this out.
So let's just compile that, make sure everything worked. Dun dun dun. Linking.
Nice.
Excellent. So add works here. We can change this to 3D Buzz. Come up to File, Add as 3D Buzz. Come up to File, or let's make sure everything works. Okay, that works. And if we come up to File, Exit, that works too.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And really, Joel, that pretty much brings us to the end of this lesson.
Yeah, definitely.
We've now demonstrated events from a couple of the different controls, and going as far as putting a menu bar in there as
That's
well.
right.
Now, again, as I said at the very beginning of this lesson, there's two different ways to go about handling events. The event table, and which you guys have seen us set up, and dynamic events.
Yeah.
And in the next lesson, we're going to focus on dynamic events. So, with that, that wraps up this lesson. Thanks.